He yanked her out of the car so hard her shoulder hit the doorframe. The pain shot down her arm, but she didn't cry out. He wanted her to cry out. The people gathering on the sidewalk wanted her to cry out. But she just stood there, eyes steady, silent as stone. As stone. The officer's voice sliced through the thick summer air. A step out of the vehicle. Now? She did. Her steps were deliberate, quiet, as if each movement carried the weight of something heavier than fear. Her hands, empty and steady, rose when he barked the command. He didn't see the faint scar across her palm. He didn't notice the long-healed burn on her wrist. All he saw was the color of her skin, the calm on her face, and he hated both. "You think you're special?" He muttered, shoving her toward the hood. The metal burned her cheek in the heat, but she didn't flinch. The crowd whispered. They always whispered. No one stepped forward. Her silence wasn't submission. It was control. He didn't know her name. He didn't know that her name was spoken with respect in rooms he would never step into. He didn't know that she had been the voice in courtrooms that made senators lower their eyes. He didn't know that she had once stood in places where silence wasn't a choice. It was survival. He only knew that she was black and standing too tall. She smelled his cologne when he leaned close. So cheap, too much of it. He smelled the faint trace of leather and something older on her, something he couldn't place. When he cuffed her, she didn't resist. When he shoved her into the back of the cruiser, she didn't speak. The quiet was almost unnerving, like standing in the eye of a storm. But storms move. The courtroom was small, the kind of place where dust clung to old blinds and the wooden benches creaked under the weight of too many secrets. He dragged her in, fingers gripping her arm tighter than necessary. He was talking too loud, making sure everyone heard his version of the story. Obstruction. Resisting. She thinks she's above the law. She looked around the room, calm, deliberate, eyes scanning faces without judgment. There was one person who met her gaze and didn't look away, a man in the corner, broad-shouldered, hair clipped close, posture that screamed military even in civilian clothes. He noticed the tattoo on her wrist before anyone else did, a fragment visible where the cuff of her blouse shifted. Not a pretty design, not decorative. It was something older, coded, unmistakable to those who knew. The SEAL commander's breath hitched, barely audible. That mark wasn't for civilians. It wasn't for the curious. It was for those who had bled for something they couldn't talk about. The officer kept ranting, feeding on his own noise. She stood there in her cuffs, her silence louder than his shouting. She thought for a moment about the night she'd gotten that tattoo. It had been raining. She remembered the sting of the needle, the scent of wet asphalt, the way her commanding officer's voice had sounded when he told her that what she was about to do would never be recorded in any official file, that she would disappear into shadows for the country she loved, and that no one would ever thank her for it. Years of silence, years of missions that didn't exist, years of funerals she couldn't attend because no one knew she'd been there when the names on those headstones took their last breath. She had carried more secrets than medals, and it showed in her eyes if anyone bothered to look close enough. T-Boats, Onibanda, the SEAL commander did. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost delicate, but it cut through the room. "Is this how you treat all your federal witnesses?" The courtroom shifted. Eyes widened. Someone dropped a pen. The cop scoffed. "A federal witness? That's cute. You think using big words." The door at the back of the room opened. 2 U.S. Marshals walked in, suits dark, movements precise. Their eyes landed on her immediately. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we're here to escort you." The cop's face drained of color. The judge blinked. "Escort her? For what reason?" The SEAL commander finally spoke, his voice low, commanding attention without raising volume. "Because you don't drag the Chief Federal Prosecutor into court in handcuffs." The words hit the room like a detonation. She didn't look at the officer when the cuffs came off. She didn't have to. Her silence was enough. She didn't demand an apology. She didn't need one. The SEAL commander stepped closer, his eyes finding hers. He didn't salute. He didn't speak her name. But his gaze said everything. "I see you. I know what that mark means, and I'll make sure they respect it." The officer stammered something, but the words died in his throat. Me's throat. The crowd in the courtroom, the same crowd that had whispered and done nothing, now shifted uneasily. Respect replaced curiosity. She straightened her sleeve, covering the tattoo again. The mark that had saved lives, ended missions, changed the course of wars, all in silence. Her voice, when she finally spoke again, carried the weight of everything she had endured. A power doesn't come from who shouts the loudest. It comes from who doesn't need to shout at all. The SEAL commander nodded, almost imperceptibly. The officer who had dragged her here would face his own reckoning, affairs, lawsuits, a career built on arrogance crumbling under the truth, but she wouldn't be the one to destroy him. She walked out of the courtroom, her heels clicking softly on the worn tile. Heels clicking softly on the worn tile. The marshals flanked her, but they weren't protecting her. They were honoring her. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. The SEAL commander lingered for a moment, watching her leave. The glimpse of the tattoo burned into his mind. He knew the stories behind marks like that, the things no one spoke of. And for the first time that day, he smiled. Not because justice had been served, but because dignity had. The cop sat alone, the echo of his own words turning to ash in his mouth. Somewhere, someone whispered her name, and respect rippled outward like a tide. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because those who understood already did, and those who didn't, they would learn.